these are songs I've written, and I thought it showed the attitude of the band, and because I wanted it to be as aggressive as Lizzy, and I mean as melodic as the solo stuff. So I was just trying a couple of things. So these were just the first two that came out, really, and we're in the process, because the whole idea of the band Grand Slam is, I mean, Brian leaving at such short notice dropped us in it a bit, but Robbie's taken over. So when we started last week, the first date, we were doing like 60% Lizzy songs and 40% Grand Slam ones. Now, within 5 dates, we're doing 80% Grand Slam ones and 20% Lizzy ones. So if you want to hear Lizzy tunes, you better hurry up and come and see us.
Well, how were those 5 dates? Was it good?
They've been great. I mean, the response has been really good. And I mean, last night was the best one, so that's why I'm acting confident now, you know. Probably means the next one will be a bit, you know, but everybody's working so hard, and like, this is our day off, and we're in the studio putting down more of the new stuff, and every day we learn a new tune, and it's really good fun for me. Whereas, like, when I did the solo stuff, it was like I was just doing something different than being in Lizzy. But now this is like bread and butter to me, so it's far more dedicated and far more, you know, there's far more theory involved about the music, you know, and
well,
what we're doing.
When you say that now live 80% of the set is Grand Slam, is a Grand Slam song, I mean, what is a Grand Slam song? Is that not just a fill-in song from 1984?
No, Grand Slam, I better introduce Grand Slam to the listeners. Hello, listeners. Grand Slam consists of Mark Stanway on keyboards. He was with a heavy metal band called Magnum, who I didn't particularly like, but he had a class with his keyboards, and I met him when we did a solo tour in Sweden, and John Sykes introduced me to him. But he is a keyboard player with a lot of class, and he's very good with contemporary sort of keyboards, as opposed to, say, Darren, who was very good technically. Mark is much more a field player. Robbie Brennan's on drums. Robbie was, well, we met in Skid Row, like with Gary Moore and Brush and myself. And Robbie's such a field player. I mean, I've done things with him with Auto da Fe. So we've done solo tours. So we've always had a relationship going, and of course he was the most obvious guy to think of after Brian deciding he didn't want the gig. Dosh Nagel from the Bogey Boys, you know. I mean, initially when Dosh, you know, came to the band, he wanted a lead guitar gig, but I was adamant that I get that this band be not based on dual lead guitars like Lizzy were, and so I said if he'd play rhythm and concentrate on sort of more guitar techniques like Andy Summers or the Fix, or, you know, like for the rhythm parts. And so it's an interesting job for him, and he's such a good singer and bass player as well, so he has all them, and songwriter, so he filled in that slot. And Lawrence Archer is the one that the pressure's on, because he's the 21-year-old like whiz kid guitar player, you know, that has to take on the legend of the other guitar players that I work with, you know, because I've worked with a few guitar players in my time. And of course there's the big bad wolf himself, myself, you know, so it is a band, much more so than the solo. Me, Philip, and his band. At the moment we're using my reputation to get some publicity and stuff, you know, but I mean, when you come and see the band, I think it'll become fairly obvious that they're all very talented people.
I would have got the impression a few years ago, even though you had said you didn't really want to be a solo artist, that you might have sort of eased your way gently out of what Thin Lizzy were, done a bit of production work here, done a few solo albums here every so often, but stayed off the road and sort of mellowed out a little bit in some ways. And yet you said you wanted always some vehicle for the aggressive part of it or whatever. Now, would it not have been possible? I mean, like Status Quo were here a few weeks ago, and Francis Rossi was saying that look, they stopped touring, it's just going to be a studio band. Could you not have seen yourself do that, like just stay solo and stay low, say?
No.
You have to go out in a live rock band.
Like, I mean, Status Quo are one thing, you know. I mean, they're a great band, and you can knock them, but I won't. But they're not my cup of tea. I wouldn't put like a band like Lizzy and Status Quo in the same, you know, league together. You know, I do think that what Lizzy were doing was completely different than what.
Sure.
Even though there was elements
yeah,
that were the same.
Yeah.
So, but insofar as the solo career, it was always like as an alternative. When Lizzy got into a state that we you know, because Thin Lizzy got away with singles like Dancing in the Moonlight and Sarah, and they were equally as popular as, you know, the Jailbreaks and the Whiskies and even Whiskey, for example, is not like a heavy track, you know, like, whereas Status Quo's to a certain extent are very similar, apart from the really like off the wall ones that they come up with, you know. So I just thought, when Lizzy, though, towards the end of the career, just became an imitation of itself to a certain extent. It was almost as if we had to be heavy and it had to be dual lead guitars. And I mean, I'm talking about, this is what Scott's saying to me when he's saying he wanted to leave, and I just, everybody had to agree we were becoming a parody of ourselves. And so, like with the, you know, with the solo stuff, I just had to do it as an alternative than going through this parody. But now I have a band that I can lead and be a member of. You know, I can try and influence it, you know, obviously a lot, but try and influence it so that I can do wherever I want, you know.
Well, like, if you take it that the very big break for Lizzy came with the Jailbreak in '76 and all that, and then right the next year, or the fact that same year, the whole new wave thing happened as well, did you resent that you were always looked upon as sort of the acceptable face of hard rock for the new wave?
No, I didn't, because I couldn't associate with I mean, well, a lot to do with the new wave, especially in the early days with the punk thing. The guys couldn't play, sing, you know, write anything, you know. So I wanted nothing to do with it. But by the same token, they had the same hopes, fears, and dreams as any musician. You know, they wanted to succeed in their art. You know, so I never found them a threat. And at the time, a lot of people were going away, so to America and concentrating on America, and that's when Lizzy took the conscious decision to remain in Europe. And in the end, we paid the toll for that, you know, because we never actually cracked America as big as we cracked Europe.
Well, now this is one of the points then about Grand Slam. I mean, there's a certain type of music that just seems to creep in and is capable of cracking anywhere. And that type of music, like, is the sort of the harder or heavier side of rock, I think. I mean, take something like Def Leppard. I mean, in Britain, they're not particularly well known, even though they're from Britain. And yet they can sell 7 million copies of their last LP, Pyromania, in the States.
No.
Hold on, do you think that Grand Slam could do in the States what Thin Lizzy didn't do?
Oh yeah, I mean, Lizzy could have done it if they'd concentrated and sold their soul. I mean, the reason Def Leppard have done it, they've sold their soul, you know.
What do you mean?
There's certain promotion people and there's certain record labels, and there's percentages that you give away to do in America. Now, what happened with Lizzy was we were at a state in our career where we had so much money that why go to America and lose money when you can tour Europe and make money, you know? Like, so if you're managing the band, what do you do? So whereas if you're a band like Def Leppard just starting off, it's better that you do a deal where you're giving away a lot initially, become famous, and then, you know, say we're not paying any more. I mean, there's the great story of Led Zeppelin. After they did, I think, Led Zeppelin 2, their deal came up. It was like, it just fell into place for them. So Peter Grant went in and asked for an unheard of amount of points for musicians. And the wars went on between the record companies, and eventually Peter Grant said, you either do it or we're going. And they signed it, but from that day on they never sold as many records, you know. So it just showed you how it's manipulated over there. I mean, Tom and Motown moved from Detroit to LA, and that had a lot to do with, you know, politics.
Well, you mentioned the last few
underworld
days
politics.
of Thin Lizzy there earlier on. Do you think that in the last few days they were sort of becoming very efficient as a hard rock band or as a melodic rock band as opposed to risky? And do you think, in other words, that Grand Slam might take a few risks?
In retrospect, I think the worst move I made was getting Snowy into the band. Because Snowy was a blues player, and because me and Brian had always liked the blues, we thought we could work with a blues player, and we thought we could teach him the aggression. But you can't teach people aggression if it's not natural, you know. And so he was slowing us down. But when Sykesy came in, the aggression was there. Now, Sykesy is a different player, you know. You can teach an aggressive player feel, because feel, you know, is your soul. So, you know, I mean, if you're experiencing things together, you can do it. And I think if we had found Sykesy, maybe, you know, because he was bringing the band back to life again, you know, he was really doing a lot. But it was too late by then. I mean, we'd call the shot.
I presume in no way you're casting any sort of a personal thing on Snowy, and that he was the nicest bloke you could meet.
No, he's great. I mean, number 6 hit single, he's a great blues player, you know, like, no, you know, I'm just.
Were you aware of the fact that even on stage that Snowy White, I don't know how many times I saw Snowy White with Thin Lizzy, but he just didn't look right at all. He just didn't seem to be into it the same way, no matter how much he could play. Yeah,
well, eventually I did, because I had to edit a video, you know, and we just kept looking for shots where,
you know, show Snowy.
I mean, he's a great guy, though.
Yeah.
He's a lovely fella.
All right, listen, I think it's about time we played a track. This is Grand Slam, and this is a track called Crime Rate.